Welcome back, everyone. Commissioner Cox with us.
I'm going to hit that now since it's coming in.
There he is.
All right. And this is what I do? You can do that. What about that? Yeah. This one. All right.
Welcome back, everyone, to the December 7th committee meetings. And we will go right into the Boating and Law Enforcement Committee. Chairman Cox.
Sorry I'm late. Captain Cook, Captain Hook,
I've been called worse.
I'm sure.
All right. Appreciate y'all allowing me to come in this evening and talk about falconry and the upcoming Peregrine falcon draw that will occur this summer. A little history about falconry. There's been evidence of raptors being used for hunting all the way back 2000 BC in the Mesopotamian civilizations. It's still practiced all over the world today without any exception. It was introduced into Europe around 400 AD, primarily with the collapse of the Roman Empire and Celtic, German, and Scandinavian cultures moving in that practiced falconry. It faded out in the 18th and 19th century with the advent of more effective firearms for taking game. It was revived back in the late 19th century and the first of the 20th century in the United Kingdom as a form of sport hunting and was introduced into North America in the early 20th century. The primary bird to be trapped to be used for falconry was the peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon is found everywhere in the world except Antarctica. They migrate from the Arctic tundra south into South America, and as you will notice, it says they hunt on the wing. They gain altitude over their prey while their prey is in flight. They come in to reach speeds up to 200 miles an hour, which makes it, to the best of my knowledge, the fastest animal in the world. And they take the prey out of the air by striking it. They follow the migration of waterfowl from the tundra into South America, thus giving them the name of also being called the duck hawk. In the 50s and 60s, with the use of DDT, they began to decline like most raptors did because of the shells being too thin for any survivable fledglings or hatchlings. They were put on the endangered species list, the federal one, in 1970. In the 80s and early 90s, the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency purchased captive peregrine falcons and did a hacking project in downtown Nashville and Chattanooga, hackings where they would place the bird in nest box the last few weeks before they would fledge. It was also an effort to control pigeons. The Smoky Mountain National Park also did hacking projects, and hacking projects throughout the country and prolific breeding and obtaining those captive birds brought the peregrine falcon back to where it was taken off the endangered species list in 1999. We have 81 permitted falconers here in the state. About a quarter of their inventories they hunt with are captive reared. The rest are birds that are trapped in the wild to be used for hunting. Most of our falconers are located in the eastern part of the state. They can take virtually all species except bald eagles and golden eagles. About 5 years ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started an experimental take season for peregrine falcons to be used in hunting. We were awarded one permit to only be used in the western part of the state. We have a proclamation now that does that drawing. And if you were to read that, you would see where they had to secure a breast feather for genetic testing. Any banded birds that were found would be recorded and released. Any birds with transmitters on them had to contact the researcher immediately. All this was part of ongoing research to determine the actual population of peregrine falcons. That research was culminated in a paper done by Dr. Frank, 2016, And all that information was put, and they finally determined that the population was about 5 times greater than what they thought. In response to that, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service this September will allow us to have 5 permits to be distributed statewide this coming summer. We plan to file a rule for the drawing since it will no longer be an experimental season. And then also in tandem, we'll run the proclamation and amend it to make sure we have a method to award those permits. The reestablishing of Peregrine falcons and the efforts and their numbers has been a real success, wildlife management success story that has benefited the hunter, the falconers. So at this time, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be glad to do my utmost to answer those questions.
Questions? Thank you, Walter.
Yes, sir.
We don't require a vote on that, do we?
Well,
Is that-
I was wondering, there's, it says there's a proposal on the agenda. Usually that would require action, but,
I'll file the rule probably within the next week or so.
perfect,
To be heard most likely in February.
perfect,
I just want to let you know when it's transpired.
Perfect.
Federal Register and what we're doing.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I thought it was a rule, so I didn't,
Yes.
but then you
were-
started looking, I thought maybe
Well, I just wanted to make, Thank you. And we'll now move to the Budget Committee, to Chairman Holbert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to call on Ken Tarkington.
Thank you. Just being nosy, any of you woodworkers, have you ever seen as many planes, augers, bracing bits in your life? It's amazing. Okay. I'm trying to look, and I can't close this thing, and I'm trying to look at the financial report. In your, or on your iPads, you should have a 3-page financial report as usual. I'm reporting through the month of October for all of our funds, as well as the interest earnings, or rather our valuation of our investment product. On the first page at the top of the boating fund, collections through October are approximately 5% less than they were at the same point in time last year. The expenses of the allotment approximate a third of the annual allotment for the year. In the middle of the page, the Wildlife Fund, our revenues, license sales are approximately 7% higher than they were at this point in time last year. And we're almost at 24% of the annual allotment for the year. The endowment programs are funds at the bottom of the page. The Watchable Endowment has approximately $150,000 balance that can be transferred. The Lifetime Sportsman has almost $49 million through October. And the identification at the very bottom is, you probably recall, is the valuation of the combo hunt and fish sold through 17 and the percent to total of the Lifetime Sportsman. That would equal the value of the folks that would have bought the Lifetime Sportsman that would have bought those licenses would approximate $7.3 million. At the second page at the top is the Wetlands Acquisition Fund. There's $8,890,000 through October in that fund. The maintenance we zero out as we usually do. And the Compensation Fund, that's the in lieu of tax, there's $463,000. The last page, the one with the color bar at the top, shows our interest earnings through the month of October. I keep saying interest earnings. That's not correct. It's the valuation of our investment with the treasurer, and it had a slight decline. We're still at 2.8, almost 2.9% since the inception. Any questions or comments?
Please. So you said on the bottom of the first page that $7.3 million is the value of the sportsman's license and that the lifetime license holders that we've got right now, had they bought a sportsman's license.
That's the percent to total of the lifetime sportsman to the combo license purchasers through 17. So, yes.
The value of the annual sportsman's
Yes.
license, that's the number of lifetime times $165. Okay.
Yes.
There is and this may not be, you may not be the one to ask, but there is a new license that we created last year, Native Son or whatever, where somebody was born here, could move away and come back and buy a resident license. I'd like to know how many of those have sold this year. If you could get that sometime
Susie, would you know?
by tomorrow maybe or whatever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Swan?
The value of the license, lifetime license that you've quantified down here, that's assuming that everyone would have bought a license.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's
which
correct.
isn't the case.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Chairman, there are several budget expansions from 5 agency divisions that are being offered for consideration today. I'd like to point out to the Commission that none of these budget expansions today include any revenue derived from license dollars. In fact, all these requests accept funds from another source. While we anticipate some of these funds will come, we do not include them in our budget until the funding is guaranteed. The process today is to formally accept these funds. With that being the case, in all the requests we will hear today, with your approval, Madam Chairman, I would like to address these items in the following way. For those divisions which have more than one request, the division chief will individually explain each item and the amount requested for each budget expansion request. At that time, we will take any questions related to that item. After the last request from that division, the chief will give the total for all the requests and we will address them in a single vote. If during the explanations there is a request to vote on a particular item individually, I will remove that item and its cost from the list and we will address it separately. Madam Chairman, is this process acceptable to you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to make sure everybody was paying attention to Chairman Holbert's request. Essentially, it will be all taken in total. All of the items will be explained. If a commissioner would like one item separated for a separate vote, simple request to the chairman of the Budget Committee. But otherwise, they will be taken in total, and there will not be a limit on the discussion. It's really more sort of the process of voting. So I'm very comfortable with that, and if anybody has any questions or needs clarifications, this would be the time to ask Chairman Holbert or myself about it. I think this is a very thoughtful way to handle this, where we continue thoughtful discussion, but address these issues a bit more efficiently if there are more than one or two items. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. No questions. Pandy English, she's only got one item, so I'm going to call on her first.
Is this embarrassing or what? Thank you, Chair Holbert and Commission. Yes, I'm Pandy English. I'm with the Biodiversity Division, and I am asking for a budget expansion, which is called our E521 budget, which is the money that we will use. What's next, guys? There we go. So it is the Biodiversity Division money that we will use. It's $178,800. These are 100% federal dollars coming from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There is match required, but all that match is provided by research institutes such as universities and NGOs. Funds will be used to conduct research on species that are either petitioned to become endangered or are under review for becoming endangered, and therefore this is an attempt to prevent species from becoming listed on the endangered species list. Funds will also be used to restore and propagate endangered species populations. That's work that goes on at our aquatic research station out at Gallatin Steam Plant. And the goal of these funds is to prevent species from being listed as federally endangered or to delist or downlist federally endangered species. Are there any questions?
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the expansion? Okay. Have a motion. Do I have a second? Got a motion and a second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pandy. Next request will be from Dave McKinney.
So how do I form? Just the arrow button. Okay. Committee Chairman Holbert, Commissioners, thank you. I have 3 budget expansions I would appreciate your consideration on. The first one is to allow us to finish the Reelfoot Spillway, which has been a project that's gone on for 6 or 8 years now. We're in the process of going from the construction phase to the operational phase, and hope to have that completed within the next couple of years. But we need to tie in all of the monitoring gauges from the lake, the outflow gauges. There are 2 gates that will be computer operated, and we have a really good working relationship with TDOT right now, who is funding about $1.2 million worth of work to make this happen. This will be our contribution to that, and I would appreciate your consideration of passage of this expansion. All of these dollars come from the state's Wetlands Fund. They're all on one slide. Now I see. The second consideration we would appreciate is to expand budget 7750, which is our budget for the Cumberland River Aquatic Center at Gallatin, where we do propagation of fish and mussels and other animals. This is a grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There are no license dollars in this, and it will allow us to initiate a 5-year project for the propagation of mussels and 2 species of fish. All of these dollars come from mitigation that the Tennessee Valley Authority owed to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the valley-wide impacts of their hydropower operations. I will tell you that the Corps of Engineers must go through this same mitigation consultation process, and we hope that if we are successful with this project that the Corps will want to invest their dollars here in the state of Tennessee, and we might be able to carry on this work beyond this 5 years. The third expansion we would ask for your consideration is to finish the habitat conservation plan for the Cumberland Plateau. These are all federal dollars, And we are in the process of completing this plan. We hope to turn it into the Fish and Wildlife Service sometime in 2018. It's been a long-running process that a lot of people have put a tremendous amount of work into out of Region 3 and Region 4, and they've done a tremendous job up to this point. Commissioner Holbert, I think that total comes to $832, $832,800, if I've added that up correctly.
You're like me, you're not used to adding numbers, that'd be.
You caught me off guard wanting the total.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Commissioner Capt?
Yeah, I got a question about the spillway money. Is the $200,000 going to do it? Is that going to fix it? Is that going to be the last time we have to pay money at Reelfoot for this spillway?
It has been our understanding that at some point we would come to the commission, and this goes back to when Commissioner Cannon was shepherding the agency through this process with TDOT and the governor's office, that we would come to you and let you know what the annual operational cost of this facility will be, which would allow you to seek funding for those annual operations from the General Assembly. The thought being that it was not fair, if you will, equitable for sportsmen in the state to pick up that operational cost when that resource is so vital to the regional economy there. Now, having said that, the design of this spillway is not one that we are familiar with, nor is TDOT. It was taken whole cloth from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have spillways similar to this, I believe, in Missouri and Oklahoma, and we are reaching out to those offices to try to get an annual estimate of what it costs to operate this type of facility. This 200 will certainly finish the agency's part of getting this project operational. But to answer your question, for the long term, that's almost a separate issue. This will get us where we need to be to put the new spillway into operation.
Well, it may be just because I can't remember or just not smart enough, and we've been told, and Director Carter's told me personally about how this is built and who's going to be responsible for operating it, and it just seemed, I understood that the Corps was going to have some responsibility in the operation of this spillway, and you kind of maybe told me, and I've forgotten, but it seems like we just continue to spend money with this, and it's never ending. I thought the Corps was going to have some responsibility. Is that not? They tell us how the lake level, but we opt to operate the spillway. Is that it?
Fish and Wildlife Service will actually be doing the operation of the spillway in terms of punching which buttons make the water level stay at the level that it is. But all the computer operations that allow that to happen and essentially the maintenance of that facility falls to the agency. As long as there's a wetlands fund, it will always qualify for that funding or a combination of Pittman Robinson and wetlands fund. But yes, our personnel will be working with Fish and Wildlife Service in terms of the mundane things of mowing the yard and making sure that the lights are all working and all those kind of things. There's a security fence that's being built now that will take away most of the work that we have to do in terms of making sure it's a secure facility. But the Corps, their major thing coming into this was to make sure that the construction of the facility followed those plans that they had in place. We had to come back because it didn't match the real operational needs of that, and that's where TDOT got involved in terms of buying drop logs and those kind of things to help us manipulate the spillway for two reasons. One of them for water level, and the other to make sure the Asian carp didn't infiltrate Reelfoot any more than they are now, because they have the ability to go up, over, or under the spillway, depending on the level of the Mississippi River. So long-winded answer to tell you that we don't think that annual operating cost will be very much. Employee time's already there. The only thing it will be, or anything that would go wrong with the computer operations or anything unusual in terms of reprogramming, but I don't expect that to be a huge cost. I don't expect it to be in the $200,000 range annually.
Is the Reelfoot preservation permit money could be used for the maintenance of operating of the spillway?
It could be. We already utilize all that money on the operation of WMA, but it could be.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dave.
Motion for approval, 7710, 7750, and 7780.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the budget expansion of $832,800, let me know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you. Motion carried.